Let's take another question from the audience. Go ahead, please stand up and give us your name.
Hi, my name is Jorge Millares. I live here in Jacksonville, and when I was 3 years old, I was very blessed that my parents brought me here from Cuba. They brought me here so that I could be raised in freedom and in liberty. President Obama has recently announced that he is liberalizing trade and travel policies. What would be your position as president toward the island of Cuba?
Senator Santorum.
I would oppose it. I've been 100% in support of the Cuban people and their right to have a free Cuba, and the United States should stand on the side of the Cuban people against these despots who are not just reigning terror, continuing reign of terror in Cuba, but now have their puppet Chavez in Venezuela, and Noriega, and Morales, and it keeps like a cancer growing. So the idea that a president of the United States would take the heart of the cancer that is in Central and South America and begin to reward behavior that has spread this cancer because of our dilly-dallying and our inattentiveness to the problems in Central and South America. Now we're going to reward the secret police that are as present in Venezuela as they are in Cuba. We're going to reward this type of thuggery, this type of Marxism in our region. We're going to reward a country that is now working with these other countries to harbor and bring in Iran and the terrorists, the jihadists who want to set up missile sites and to set up training camps. And so we're going to reward this behavior by opening up and liberalizing. This is the exact wrong message at the exact wrong time.
Congressman Paul, you said the U.S. should talk to everyone. Imagine you're in the Oval Office. You speak to Raul Castro. What would you say to him?
Well, I'd ask him what he called about. You know, what was the purpose of his call? No, I would ask him, what can we do to improve relations? Because I wouldn't see them as likely to attack us. When I was drafted in October of '62, that was a different world. I mean, there were nuclear weapons in Cuba. That was a different story. But today, not to talk to them and take the call and see what you can work out, helps Castro. It hurts the people, the dissidents, the people who want to overthrow him have always had to be, you know, nationalistic and unified behind the leader. So as well-intended as these sanctions are, they almost inevitably backfire, and they help the dictators and hurt the people. So it's time to change. The Cold War is over. They're not going to invade us, and I just think that a better relationship and trade relationship, so many people, I think I've noticed already, and since I've been talking about this issue the last 4 or 5 years, I think the people have changed their mind. The American people are getting much more open, not nearly as frightened. People, I don't think they see a jihadist under the bed every night, and we have to worry about that. I think I worry about overreaction and overconcern and lack of ability to talk to them when they call you.
I want both of you to weigh in. Governor Romney first.
Two major flaws with President Obama's foreign policy as it relates to Latin America.
What about Ron Paul's policy?
Well, I'm talking about President Obama right now. We can get back to Ron Paul in a moment. First of all, I think the president has largely ignored Latin America, Cuba in particular, Venezuela, and other nations. I think we have to change that dramatically. I think we have to have economic initiatives to build trade throughout Latin America, particularly with Colombia and Panama, now part of free trade agreements. I want more of that throughout Latin America. But that's one flaw, first flaw, ignoring Latin America. And number two is reaching out with accommodations to some of the world's worst actors, whether it was Putin in Russia giving him what he wanted, or Castro saying we're going to let you have remittances coming from the U.S. to fund your future, or relaxed trade restrictions. Throughout the world, with Ahmadinejad opening an open hand, tyrants look for weakness to take advantage. That's the wrong course. The right course for Cuba is to continue to honor Helms-Burton. And if I'm president of the United States, I will use every resource we have, short of invasion and military action, Congressman Paul, I'll use every resource we can to make sure that when Fidel Castro finally leaves this planet, that we are able to help the people of Cuba enjoy freedom. They want it. It's a God-given right, and it is our responsibility to help share the gift of freedom with the people throughout the world that are seeking it.
Are you open to it, Mr. Speaker? Are you open to improving relations with Cuba?
Well, let me start with where the governor correctly pointed out. I was very proud as Speaker to be able to make sure that the Helms-Burton Act passed, and I'm delighted that Congressman Dan Burton is here tonight and is campaigning with me, because it was a very important step towards isolating the Castro regime. I think it's amazing that Barack Obama is worried about an Arab Spring. He's worried about Tunisia. He's worried about Libya. He's worried about Egypt. He's worried about Syria. And he cannot bring himself to look south and imagine a Cuban Spring. And I would argue that we should have as a stated explicit policy that we want to facilitate the transition from the dictatorship to freedom. We want to bring together every non-military asset we have, exactly as President Reagan and Prime Minister Thatcher and Pope John Paul II did in Poland and in Eastern Europe. They broke up the Soviet Empire without a general war by using a wide range of things, one of which is just psychological, saying to the next generation of people in Cuba, the dictatorship is not going to survive. You need to bet on moving to freedom in order to have prosperity in Cuba, and we will help you get to that freedom.
Let's stay on this. Let's take another question from the audience. Please give us your name and tell us where you're from.
Abraham Hassan from Jacksonville, Florida. How would a Republican administration help bring peace to Palestine and Israel when most candidates barely recognize the existence of Palestine or its people? As a Palestinian-American Republican, I'm here to tell you we do exist.
Let's ask Governor Romney. First of all, what would you say to Abraham?
Well, the reason that there's not peace between the Palestinians and Israel is because there is in the leadership of the Palestinian people are Hamas and others who think like Hamas, who have as their intent the elimination of Israel. And whether it's in school books that teach how to kill Jews, or whether it's in the political discourse that is spoken either from Fatah or from Hamas, there is a belief that the Jewish people do not have a right to have a Jewish state. There are some people who say, should we have a two-state solution? And the Israelis would be happy to have a two-state solution. It's the Palestinians who don't want a two-state solution. They want to eliminate the state of Israel. And I believe America must say, and the best way to have peace in the Middle East is not for us to vacillate and to appease, but is to say we stand with our friend Israel. We are committed to a Jewish state in Israel. We will not have an inch of difference between ourselves and our ally Israel. This president went before the United Nations and castigated Israel for building settlements. He said nothing about thousands of rockets being rained in on Israel from the Gaza Strip. This president threw... I think he threw Israel under the bus with regards to defining the 67 borders as a starting point of negotiations. I think he disrespected Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, Bibi Netanyahu. I think he has time and time again shown distance from Israel, and that has created, in my view, a greater sense of aggression on the part of the Palestinians. I will stand with our friend Israel.
Thank you, Governor. Speaker Gingrich, you got into a little hot water when you said the Palestinians were an invented people.
It was technically an invention in the late 1970s, and it was clearly so. Prior to that, they were Arabs. Many of them were either Syrian, Lebanese, or Egyptian, or Jordanian. There are a couple of simple things here. There were 11 rockets fired into Israel in November. Now imagine in Duval County that 11 rockets hit from your neighbor. How many of you would be for a peace process? And how many of you would say, you know, that looks like an act of war? You have leadership unequivocally, and Governor Romney is exactly right. The leadership of Hamas says not a single Jew will remain. Well, you're not having a peace negotiation then. This is war by another form. My goal for the Palestinian people would be to live in peace, to live in prosperity, to have the dignity of a state, to have freedom, and they can achieve it any morning they are prepared to say Israel has a right to exist, we give up the right to return, and we recognize that we're going to live side by side. Now let's work together to create mutual prosperity, and you could in 5 years dramatically improve the quality of life of every Palestinian, but the political leadership would never tolerate that, and that's why we are in a continuous state of war where Obama undermines the Israelis. On the first day, that I'm president, if I do become president, I will sign an executive order directing the State Department to move the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem to send the signal with Israel.
Let's go to Miami. Let's take another question from Miami. Juan Carlos, go ahead.
Thank you, Wolf. I am joined now by Elizabeth Cuevas Neunder. She is the CEO and founder of the Puerto Rican Chamber of Commerce in Florida. She's based out of Tampa. And I'm pretty sure, Elizabeth, your question has to do with the beautiful island of Puerto Rico.
Seguro que sí. Good evening, buenas noches. I am bilingual, proud of it. My question is to the candidates. We have 4 million Puerto Ricans in United States voters, 3.8 in Puerto Rico. We have been treated as second-class citizens, and just now our governor's name was not mentioned as a VP possibility, a great governor. My question to you is, where do you stand for Puerto Rico to become a state? And secondly, where do you stand on domestic trade between Florida and Puerto Rico, between Tampa Bay and Ponce ports, which have been neglected?
All right, Senator Santorum, let's throw that question to you. Right, the question about, do you support Puerto Rico potentially as the 51st state?
Well, first I'll give a shout out to Governor Luis Fortuño, who's a good friend of mine, and someone, I know him and his family. We've known each other for many years. We actually used to go to church together. And so I spoke to Luis this week. And I've been to Puerto Rico many times. And actually, when I was a United States Senator, we did a lot of work with Puerto Rico. Because of my relationship with many friends down there, I was made aware of problems, for example, in the Medicaid program. We went down and we actually passed things to help with reimbursement rates, which were deplorably low in Puerto Rico. We also worked on hurricane relief and a whole host of other things as a result of my relationship with many Puerto Ricans in Pennsylvania and developed those relationships on the island. I believe that I believe in self-determination. The Puerto Rican people should have the opportunity to be able to speak on this. I have supported that. I don't take a position one way or the other on statehood, Commonwealth, independence. That's for the people of Puerto Rico to decide. But I also supported a lot of things to help the Puerto Rican economy. Puerto Ricans are United States citizens, and the poverty, the unemployment rates simply are simply not something that we as Americans should allow to occur in our country. And we need to make sure that there are pro-growth, supply-side economics to make sure that Puerto Rico can be successful as an economy in that island, and I believe they can, and under my administration, that's something that I would work toward.
I'll take that as a maybe, right? Statehood, not statehood?
Oh, no, I take no position on that. That's I've supported, the opportunity for them to make that decision.
Let's take another question from the audience here. Go ahead, please. What's your name?
Suzanne Bass. I'm an attorney in Jacksonville. Welcome to the great city of Jacksonville. My question, how would your religious beliefs, if you're elected, impact the decisions that you make in the office of the presidency?
Congressman Paul?